Most men believe their story begins with freedom. They imagine themselves as blank slates, free to carve their destiny, free to chase their passions, free to decide who they will become. That's the illusion. That's the beautiful lie whispered at birth. The brutal truth. By the time a boy takes his first breath, the chains are already waiting, invisible, polished, wrapped in words like duty, responsibility, and manhood. From the cradle, society begins its programming. The lullabies are not songs of freedom, they are scripts of obedience. The toys, the lessons, the expectations, they're all loaded with codes. A boy is not simply nurtured, he is engineered. He is taught to silence his emotions, to equate pain with strength, to confuse sacrifice with love. Before he ever chooses, the game has already been rigged. Think about it. When a girl cries, she is comforted. When a boy cries, he is told, "Be strong, don't cry, toughen up." That moment seems small, but it's the first brick in a prison of identity. The boy learns that his feelings are irrelevant, that his worth is measured by endurance, not authenticity. And so begins the lifelong conditioning, the death of self for the survival of the role. As he grows, the programming deepens. In school, he learns that his value is in performance. Win the game, ace the test, never fall behind. In his family, he learns that his future is already spoken for. Protect your sister, work hard for your parents' pride, become a provider. And in culture, he absorbs the myth that a real man exists only for others. His dreams are negotiable. His purpose is service. His individuality is collateral damage. This is not parenting. This is not love. This is indoctrination. By the time he becomes an adult, most men are not free agents. They are programmed soldiers. Soldiers trained to march into relationships, into marriage, into fatherhood, carrying scripts they never wrote, fighting battles they never chose, sacrificing pieces of themselves until nothing remains but a role. And here's the sinister twist. Society makes this programming look noble. It disguises chains as crowns. It cloaks servitude in the language of honor. Be a good man. Be responsible. Be a provider. Be a father. Be a husband. Be strong. On the surface, these words inspire. Beneath the surface, they enslave. Every "be a man" is another line of code injected into the matrix, another lever of control. The result? Men believe they are free while living inside cages. They chase success thinking it's their choice, when in reality it's compliance. They enter relationships thinking it's romance, when in reality it's obligation. They sacrifice for children thinking it's love, when in reality it's leverage. They collapse under burdens they never questioned, and when they finally ask, "Why am I suffering?" society hands them the same answer every time. Because you're a man. That's what men do. This is the hidden matrix, the manipulation that begins not in adulthood, but in the cradle. You were not raised, you were programmed. And unless you decode the system, you will spend your life mistaking obedience for strength, mistaking chains for honor, mistaking manipulation for love. Today, we're pulling back the curtain. We're exposing the architecture of control that shapes men before they even know they're playing the game. This is not about bitterness. This is not about blame. This is about survival. Because the first step to freedom is seeing the matrix you were born into. To understand how deep the manipulation goes, you must strip away the illusion of freedom and look at the architecture that shapes a man long before he becomes one. The truth is this: the conditioning doesn't begin in adulthood. It begins in childhood. And once you see the layers, you realize that what we call growing up is often just the tightening of invisible chains. From a psychological perspective, every society programs its members to maintain order. That in itself is not sinister, it's survival. But when it comes to men, the programming has a darker edge. It does not merely guide, it molds. It doesn't just encourage, it demands. Male psychology is shaped less by what he desires and more by what others expect of him. And that expectation is not a suggestion, it's a script. Developmental psychology shows us that identity is formed through repeated reinforcement. When a boy is rewarded for silence, praised for endurance, and punished for vulnerability, he internalizes a simple code. I am valuable only when I suppress myself. This is the root of role entrapment, the point where a human being ceases to be an individual and becomes a function. He no longer asks, "Who am I?" Instead, he asks, "What do others need me to be?" Evolutionary psychology adds another layer. For thousands of years, survival demanded division of labor. Men hunted, fought, and protected. Women nurtured, gathered, and cared. These roles weren't chosen, they were imposed by necessity. But while women's roles evolved with society, men's programming was fossilized. Modern culture still tells men, you are protector, you are provider, you are sacrifice. The old survival code became a modern prison. Social psychology explains why this programming is so effective. Conformity. Humans fear exclusion more than death itself. To be cast out of the group is to lose identity, support, and survival. That fear is exploited in male conditioning. From childhood, men learn that failure to perform their role will not just disappoint others, it will exile them. Be strong or be worthless, provide or be invisible, protect or be discarded. The group enforces the script through shame, ridicule, and judgment. Cultural psychology then takes the reins. Every story, film, and tradition reinforces the narrative. The hero suffers in silence, gives everything, dies for others. From Greek myths to Hollywood blockbusters, the male arc is not freedom, it is sacrifice. Boys grow up idolizing warriors, fathers, martyrs, never men who simply lived for themselves, and so the pattern is repeated. Men don't dream, they inherit obligations. Finally, institutional psychology locks the system in place. Schools reward compliance over creativity. Workplaces value endurance over balance. Laws codify male obligation into permanent contracts. Religion moralizes sacrifice as the highest virtue. At every level, the same message echoes. Your life is not yours. Your identity is a tool. Your existence is service. Together, these layers form the manipulation matrix. Biological instincts, cultural myths, social shame, and institutional structures all combine into a web so tight that most men never see it. They believe they are making choices, when in reality their choices are already framed. They believe they are free, when in reality their freedom has been traded for obedience before they even knew what freedom was. And here lies the devastating truth. This isn't accidental, it is efficient. A man who questions too much is dangerous. A man who refuses to comply is unpredictable. But a man programmed from birth to equate his worth with sacrifice, he is the perfect cog in the machine. He works, he provides, he obeys, he collapses quietly. And when he does, another programmed boy takes his place. This is the psychological context of the manipulation matrix. It is not random, it is not new, it is ancient, systematic, and ruthlessly effective. And unless you see it clearly, you will live and die inside it, mistaking your prison for purpose, your chains for honor, and your programming for identity. 1. The childhood script. Definition. The first layer of manipulation is written when a boy is too young to even question it. Society programs him through reward and punishment. Praise when he suppresses emotions, shame when he shows vulnerability. Example, a boy cries after being hurt. Instead of comfort, he hears, "Man up, stop crying, be tough." In that moment, the lesson is not resilience, it is suppression. Consequence. As he grows, he learns that emotions are liabilities. Vulnerability is weakness. Expression is dangerous. He internalizes a script that says, "My value is measured by silence and endurance." Hidden message: you are not allowed to be human. You are only allowed to be strong. 2. The hero. Myth definition. The second layer is cultural storytelling. Every society glorifies men who sacrifice, warriors, martyrs, fathers who give everything. Rarely do boys hear stories of men who lived fully for themselves. Example, from childhood cartoons to epic films, the male protagonist always proves his worth by dying, sacrificing, or enduring unbearable pain for others. Consequence: men equate love with loss, duty with destruction. They grow up idolizing self-erasure as the highest form of virtue. Hidden message: your life only has meaning when you bleed for someone else. 3. The provider trap definition. As he matures, the boy becomes an economic resource. His worth is tied not to his identity, but to his productivity. Work, career, and financial provision are framed as his highest duty. Example, a young man is told that before he can even think of marriage or family, he must get a good job, buy a house, prove he can provide. Consequence: his dreams are reshaped into obligations. He doesn't work because he loves the mission. He works because his worth depends on it. His career becomes not self-expression, but survival. Hidden message: you are not a man, you are a paycheck. 4. The social cage definition. This mechanism uses shame, ridicule, and public judgment to keep men compliant. From locker rooms to boardrooms, men are policed by peers, family, and community. Example, a man who rejects marriage or refuses to have children is mocked as selfish, immature, or incomplete. A man who quits a soul-crushing job is judged as lazy or irresponsible. Consequence: fear of judgment keeps him obedient. He learns to conform, not because he believes, but because deviation carries social exile. Hidden message: your freedom ends where society's expectations begin. 5. The institutional leash definition. The final mechanism is the hardest to escape: laws, religions, and systems that codify male obligation. Schools reward obedience, workplaces exploit endurance, governments enforce financial responsibility long after love ends. Example, divorce courts where men lose half their wealth. Religious sermons that preach sacrifice as holiness, workplaces that celebrate burnout as commitment. Consequence: at this level, there is no negotiation. The leash is legal, cultural, and systemic. A man's life is no longer his own, it belongs to the machine. Hidden message: you were never free. The contract was signed before you could read it. These 5 mechanisms, the childhood script, the hero myth, the provider trap, the social cage, and the institutional leash, are not random pressures. They are layers of the manipulation matrix. Each one locks into the next, forming a system so complete that most men never question it. They don't need walls or chains because the prison is invisible, and the prisoner learns to guard it himself. 1. Escaping the childhood script rule. Redefine strength. Real strength is not silence, it's self-mastery. How to survive. When the old voice says, "Man up, stop crying," replace it with, "Control the emotion, don't deny it." Instead of suppression, practice channeling, training, writing, creation. These are outlets that transform weakness into force. Never do. Don't confuse numbness with resilience. A man who feels nothing is not strong. He is broken. 2. Breaking the hero myth rule. Stop worshipping sacrifice. Your life is not measured by how much you lose, but by how much you build. How to survive. Redefine the story you follow. Heroes who die for others are relics of old programming. Become the hero who lives fully, who creates, who inspires by example, not by self-destruction. The man who thrives is worth more than the man who collapses. Never do. Don't fall for guilt when others call you selfish for keeping your energy. A dead man cannot provide, cannot protect, cannot lead. 3. Escaping the provider trap rule. Provide with boundaries. You are not a wallet. You are a man. How to survive. Build systems instead of bleeding endlessly. Invest in stability, savings, skills, assets, but refuse to bankroll manipulation. Give, but not until you're empty. Provide, but not until you vanish. Teach those around you resilience instead of dependency. Never do. Don't confuse sacrifice with love. A man who destroys himself proves nothing but his own blindness. 4. Breaking the social cage rule. Silence is stronger than explanation. How to survive. When society pressures you, why aren't you married? Why don't you have kids? Don't explain, don't justify, say less, do more. Build your life in alignment with your values, not their expectations. Protect your circle. Not everyone deserves access to your battles. Never do. Don't chase approval from the crowd. Every justification is a confession of weakness. Respect is not begged, it is demonstrated. 5. Cutting the institutional leash rule. Prepare as if freedom depends on it, because it does. How to survive. Learn the contracts before you sign. Whether it's marriage, loans, or obligations, treat every agreement as a battlefield. Knowledge is armor. Documentation is weaponry. Strategy is survival. The system preys on blind men. Don't walk in blind. Never do. Don't assume fairness. The law, the church, the corporation, they don't care about your heart, they care about compliance. The survival formula. Every mechanism, childhood script, hero myth, provider trap, social cage, institutional leash, follows the same cycle. See, name, respond. See, recognize the program running. Name, label it in your mind. Awareness kills the illusion. Respond. Act with clarity, not reaction. Refuse to collapse, refuse to justify, refuse to explain. Survival in the manipulation matrix is not about rage or rebellion, it's about awareness and discipline. The man who sees the code is no longer trapped by it. He becomes the exception. He becomes the strategist inside a system designed to consume him. So now you see it. The game was never about love, freedom, or choice. It was about programming. From the moment you were born, the manipulation matrix has been shaping your thoughts, your habits, your loyalties. You thought you were choosing, but the choices were written for you. You thought you were free, but every step was framed inside invisible walls. That's the hidden cost of living blind, mistaking the code for reality. Look around. How many men do you know who gave everything, followed every rule, and still ended up broken? They worked, they provided, they sacrificed, yet all they got in return was silence, emptiness, and chains they never saw coming. That is not failure. That is design. The system feeds on men who don't question it, on men who confuse obedience with virtue, on men who think survival means submission, but you are no longer one of them. You've pulled back the curtain, you've seen the architecture, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. From this point forward, you have two choices: collapse like the majority, or step into mastery. Collapse means continuing the script, working until you break, sacrificing until you vanish, obeying until you no longer exist. Mastery means breaking the script, seeing the code, naming it, and refusing to dance to its rhythm. This is not paranoia, it's clarity. And clarity is power. The man who sees the code can never be fully controlled again. He may face pressure, but he doesn't fold. He may be tested, but he doesn't collapse. He may be shamed, judged, or manipulated, but he never confuses noise for truth. He stands, silent and unshaken, while the world scrambles to pull him back into the cage. That is survival. That is freedom. But understand this, the manipulation matrix doesn't end here. What you've seen today is only one layer. Beyond childhood scripts, beyond the hero myth, beyond the provider trap, beyond the social cage and the institutional leash, there are deeper codes, contracts you never signed but still obey, expectations you never agreed to but still carry, invisible debts you inherited before you even knew the game existed. That's the next level. That's the darker truth waiting ahead. So here's what you do now. Subscribe. Stay here, because the next episode will show you the traps that make fatherhood, marriage, and society itself the ultimate battlefield for men who walk blind. If you thought this was dark, what comes next will shake you even harder. You've unlocked another layer of the code today. The next one is waiting. Don't miss it.